It seems like every year the headlines get worse. Wildfires, they're more frequent, they're more intense, and just way more destructive. It's a full-blown global crisis. But what if we could fight fire with something other than just water? What if we could fight it with data? What if we could actually predict where the next big blaze is going to ignite? Well, today, we're diving into a powerful new ally we have in this fight: artificial intelligence. Let's dig in and see how it's completely changing the game. I mean, look at this. The threat is it's immense. We're talking about a destructive force of nature that's being supercharged by our changing climate. But here's the hopeful part. Our ability to understand and even forecast these monster fires, it's growing right alongside the threat itself. And it's all thanks to technology that honestly would have sounded like science fiction just a decade ago. Okay, so before we get into the cool tech solution, we really have to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the problem. Because we are living in a world that is, and I mean this quite literally, more on fire than ever before. Just look at this number: 7 million. That's not a one-time thing. That's the average number of acres that have burned every single year just in the United States since the year 2000. To put that into perspective for you, it's more than double the rate we were seeing back in the 90s. The trend here is crystal clear. And yeah, it's accelerating. And this right here, this is why it's such a wickedly difficult problem to solve. You see, wildfires aren't just a result of climate change, they're also a cause. When forests burn, they release these massive amounts of carbon dioxide. That CO2 traps more heat in the atmosphere, which in turn leads to warmer temperatures, which then dries out more forests, creating the perfect fuel for the next, even bigger fire. It's this vicious, dangerous cycle, a positive feedback loop that we absolutely have to figure out how to break. And this is what we're talking about. This is what's at stake. On the one hand, you have a healthy, thriving ecosystem. It's a carbon sink, it's a home for countless species. And then, on the other hand, you have this: a completely charred, devastated landscape. We're not just losing trees here, folks. We're losing entire habitats. We're losing clean water sources. And we're putting homes and, of course, human lives at enormous risk. So the big question is, how do you even begin to fight a problem that's this complex, this interconnected? Well, you need a tool that can see the whole picture. You need a completely new kind of response. And that's where AI comes in. Okay, what's so fascinating here is the fundamental shift this represents. For decades, right, firefighting has relied on hard-earned experience and gut instinct. And that's heroic, for sure, but it's also reactive. You're always playing catch-up. AI completely changes the game. We're moving away from relying on limited, fragmented data sets to processing these vast, consolidated streams of information from all over the place. It allows us to shift from just reacting to a blaze to actually proactively predicting it and even simulating our response before we send anyone in. So how does an AI actually see fire risk? Well, one of the key pieces of tech is something called a convolutional neural network, or a CNN for short. Now, the easiest way to wrap your head around this is to think of it like facial recognition, but for landscapes. You know how an AI learns to spot a face by first recognizing pixels, then edges, then features like eyes and a nose? A CNN does the same thing, but it looks at a map. It learns to recognize the patterns that scream high fire risk. Things like the type of vegetation, the slope of the land, moisture levels, all of it. It's spatially aware. It gets the context of the terrain. And this is why AI is pretty much the perfect tool for this job. Wildfires are what scientists call a nonlinear problem. All that really means is that tiny changes, like a small shift in wind direction or a slight drop in humidity, can have massive, totally unpredictable effects. Humans are terrible at tracking that stuff, but AI, it thrives on this kind of complexity. It can drink from a fire hose of data. We're talking weather satellites, drones, on-the-ground sensors, you name it. And it can spot these incredibly subtle patterns a human analyst would never see. Like, for example, it might find a correlation between a specific pattern of soil drying it sees from space and a sudden spike in social media posts that mention illegal campfires in that exact same remote region. That's a connection no person would ever make. Now, this isn't just some far-off theoretical idea. This technology is being put into practice as we speak. So let's take a look at a real-world example to see exactly how these ideas are taking shape on the ground. It's called the FireEye Initiative, and it's a huge collaboration. You've got the World Economic Forum working with global tech and consulting firms. Their goal sounds simple, but it's incredibly ambitious. Take these super advanced AI systems out of the research lab and put them directly into the hands of firefighters on the front lines. The idea is to create a global network built on shared data and predictive power. And guess what? They're already seeing success. Their very first pilot project was in Turkey, a country that has faced some absolutely devastating fires. The team there created an AI-driven interactive risk map. Now, this wasn't just some static, here's a risky area kind of map. No, it actively modeled fire probability and severity. This helped officials make crucial decisions about where to pre-position their most critical resources, their trucks, their crews, making sure they could be deployed way faster and more effectively the moment a fire did break out. Okay, so that pilot project in Turkey, that really shows you the power of prediction. But, and this is the cool part, prediction is just the beginning. The truly revolutionary step, the real mind-blowing part, is what comes next. It's the ability to not just forecast a fire, but to actually simulate it, to basically play out the entire battle before it even begins. This quote from the report really nails it. They call it a quantum leap, and it's true. I mean, just imagine being able to see the future, to run a scenario and see what happens if you do nothing versus what happens if you deploy your teams in a very specific way. That's not just an improvement, that is an absolute game changer. And how they do this? With something called a digital twin. The best way to think about it is like a super realistic video game version of a real forest, but one with perfect real-world physics. Every single tree, every hill, the exact moisture content of the soil, it's all recreated in this virtual model. And on this digital copy, firefighters can safely run endless simulations. They can test how a fire might spread under different wind conditions, and they can figure out the absolute best way to respond, all without ever putting a single life or piece of equipment at risk. Now, building one of these complete AI wildfire solutions is, as you can imagine, a massive undertaking, but it follows a pretty clear 5-stage path. Stage 1 is definition. You've got to figure out what exactly do we need this system to do? Who's going to use it? Then stage 2 is data. This is where you connect that huge network of inputs, sensors, satellites, the whole 9 yards. Third up is modeling. This is where the AI brain takes all that raw data and turns it into real, actionable predictions about where a fire might start and how it might spread. Fourth, you build the digital twin, that virtual world we were just talking about, where you can visualize everything and simulate all kinds of scenarios. And finally, stage 5 is automation. This is where you start to identify opportunities for the system to take automated actions on its own, like maybe deploying drones to a hotspot or instantly alerting the right teams. So yeah, the potential here is it's enormous. The roadmap is there, but let's be real, getting there is not going to be easy. There are still some pretty significant hurdles we need to clear on this next frontier. Think about it. Wildfires don't stop for borders, right? So our response can't either. The biggest barriers right now aren't really technological. They're about collaboration. We need way more international cooperation. And here's the really critical part. We need countries to be willing to share their wildfire data with each other. Because at the end of the day, an AI is only as good as the data you train it on. So improving the quality of that data, making it accessible, and getting it in real time, that is the single most important thing we have to do to make these solutions work on a global scale. And all of this brings us to the final and most crucial question. The technology, it's here. We are right on the cusp of being able to forecast the future fire with truly astonishing accuracy. We have the tools that can show us the risk, model the devastation, and even simulate the best possible response. But, having a tool and having the collective will to actually use that tool, well, those are two very different things. So the question really isn't about the tech anymore. It's about us. Are we ready to act on what it's telling us?